Happy politics and welcome to what I think, and I hope you do too, is the best BC politics podcast you can find on YouTube or the interwebs or any of the places that Rob Shaw makes up each week on that other show. This is BC Poly Hot Stove. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of this very fine site, The Orca, and I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
It's Jordan Bateman, VP Comms for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, and the number one trending figure on Podface.
Pod Humper, Pod Face, Pod of Thousands. There's a million, some of which I can't say on a children's show. A family show. This is probably not a good children's show. Jordan, there's a lot to talk about this week, but if you'll forgive me, I think we should actually go back in time to last week because we didn't had a chance. Well, we tape last week on Tuesday, this week on Wednesday. Last Friday was a major development in BC politics where in the BC Liberal leadership race, Aaron Gunn, who we have discussed several times on this show, was officially denied. He was rejected as a candidate by the BC Liberal Party and their leadership organizing committee. I will be honest with you. I was not surprised. This is the outcome I expected. Obviously, others are quite upset, including, to be fair and understandably, Aaron Gunn himself. Where do you land on all this?
Well, Maclean, my general operating theory right now around the party is that whatever the most self-damaging thing the BC Liberal Party can do in any given situation is inevitably the course they will take. And I think it's been proven out here yet again. I'm very disappointed the party rejected Gunn's candidacy. Much better to have him in the race and have him get his butt kicked and have that expressed through the democratic means of the members. If you're worried that the too many members would sign up and join the Aaron Gunn campaign, then maybe you don't really know the party at all. Maybe you shouldn't be in charge of it if that's what your big concern is. I have been firmly in the camp that Aaron Gunn should be allowed to run and should be allowed to get his butt kicked. And if candidates like Michael Lee don't like it, they should be, have to defeat him in a straight-up race. That has not happened. I think this is very damaging for the BC Liberals long term because there are social conservatives, although I wouldn't term Gunn a social conservative, but some people would like to, but he's not. But there are social conservatives and there are other people on the right flank of the party who now feel completely shut out of the process. And it just reinforces to them that somehow the federal Liberals have taken control of the BC Liberal Party and are running it to the left. It made more sense to me to let him in the race. Look, the disqualifying comment apparently, and this, the BC Liberal Party hasn't come out with a definitive statement, and they should, by the way, come out with a definitive statement like this is why we disqualified him, and this is the 5 things he said, or the 2 things, or the 1 thing, or the 30 things he said that reinforce that. But my understanding is it was comments around residential schools. Here's the problem with that. The only Indigenous person in the race is Ellis Ross. And Ellis Ross says Aaron Gunn should be in this campaign.
That's a fair point.
It's very difficult for me to understand how, 7 non-Indigenous people on a committee can take more offense to a comment that Aaron Gunn made than the only Indigenous candidate in the race who would actually have to go out and defeat Aaron Gunn in that race. So, yeah, I don't know why the party feels like it needs to, jump on top of every grenade that is laying on the ground. Just let them go off over there. Put Aaron Gunn in the race. Now what you've done is you've infused energy into what could, he could go over to the BC Conservative Party. He could start the People's Party of British Columbia. He could start a Maverick Party. You're just opening it up to all sorts of things. It's better to have him inside the tent and, defeat his ideas than it is to turn him loose like this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the counterpoint to that, the short and snappy one would be, look, the NDP was very disappointed that he was not allowed in the race. So, I mean, you could take from that reaction some of the reason and rationale that probably went. I don't have any intel here. I have not spoken to anyone on the leadership committee. The other thing I would say is, I can understand Aaron Gunn being very disappointed and upset because obviously, and I do believe he was sincere in that he wanted to run and he wanted to try and win and then lead the party into the next election. I absolutely do not doubt his sincerity. He has not necessarily comported himself well in the last couple days. He's been, threatening a recall campaign against Dan Davies on Twitter. He's in those kinds of things will kind of only prove the party's point, I think. But again, I don't doubt that he is very legitimately upset. And to the point that, there are people like Aaron who are saying, well, this just shows the federal conservatives have no home in the BC Liberal Party. We're talking about a race that Kevin Falcon is the runaway favorite right now. He is, I think everyone would agree, an avowed federal conservative. Ellis Ross is maybe arguably in second place. I think you could also call him a conservative. Michael Lee, yes, granted a progressive conservative, but still works for a PC prime minister. And so it's important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. So I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Aaron Gunn put a year of work into this campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. He's allowed to be disappointed, for sure.
He's allowed to be disappointed. Frankly, he's allowed to threaten whatever he wants to do. That's the nature of it. You make this decision, you're going to be held accountable for it. I do know that there are folks beyond the Laurie Thronuses of the world who have canceled memberships in the BC Liberal Party and moved on. I'm not saying there's hundreds, but there's been more than a handful. This is a problem going forward. Listen, the BC Liberal Party, and this is why Aaron Gunn was kind of popular with that group. The BC Liberal Party has to quit defining themselves by what the NDP puts out in press releases about them. They have to quit quivering and freaking out that they're going to make press progress. The Ed Broadbent Institute's going to bash them. They've got to get over themselves on this. And what attracts supporters to people like Aaron, and to a lesser degree Ellis, is that they will look into the camera and they will defend themselves against charges that the left is shooting at them. And people listen and go, oh man, that could totally be me. I've said dumb things on Facebook, or I actually share that opinion. Am I, would Ed Broadbent Institute come after me? They can defend themselves in a way that the BC Liberal Party just refuses to do. Right now what happens is there's a criticism, let's take Life magazine back. Is it Life magazine? Light magazine, back in the day.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's a Christian magazine with views that I don't necessarily agree with. But by the way, I don't agree with views espoused sometimes in the Vancouver Sun or the Langley Advanced Times or any number of other media outlets. But you advertise in them because they reach an audience. It was a Easter message from MLAs to Christians saying Happy Easter. And, Press Progress ripped out the most controversial things Light magazine's ever published and said, oh, well, clearly the BC Liberals support all of this, homophobia and bigotry. And, instead of talking about it and being like, wait a minute, how else are we supposed to advertise to Christians? We advertise in Muslim magazines, in Punjabi papers. How else do we reach out to these groups of people? They all kind of scattered and and no one defended anything.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with the BC Liberals.
On this particular file. And it happened at around the same time that no one was chasing, the brick for advertising in the Vancouver Sun when they published a nakedly racist op-ed. You can't hold advertisers accountable for, content they don't see beforehand.
Totally. And so they turtled. And whether you agree with the Light magazine advertising or not, and I can kind of see both sides. Look, as someone who runs a marketing budget, we advertise in outlets all the time that don't necessarily agree with ICBA values, but we do it because we're trying to reach specific audiences. I do think that, they've got to quit defining themselves by being terrified of what the media bubble, the Twitter bubble, and the NDP are going to say about them. And that is more than the Gunn's videos are more common sense in politics, whatever. If you actually listen, they're pretty content light. It's a lot of buzzwords and whatnot, but he's at least looking into the camera and addressing these things head on. And that's more than I can say for most of the BC Liberal Party. And frankly, to their weakness. And they should be standing up stronger for what they believe in. But the truth is, Maclean, I'm not sure a lot of them fully can articulate what they believe in anymore. Some can. Those ones need to get out there and start talking about this more. And that's really what this leadership race is turning into, which is a discussion of how do we rebuild the party, and more importantly, how do we anchor it to the values that are historic to the free enterprise parties in British Columbia, whether Socred or BC Liberal through the generations, but gear our message to the times and understand how those principles interact with things like housing affordability and childcare and all these other important issues to British Columbians. And that's what it's coming down to. And I do worry that, you lose a voice like Aaron Gunn in that discussion, that, the discussion is weaker for it.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I think everyone can agree on is no matter which, this was either a yes or no decision from the BC Liberal Party, and no matter which way they went, there were going to be some upset people. You're making a very good case for the people who are upset because they said no.
Yeah. On the other side, the Michael Lee campaign came out early and was, don't let him in the race, and basically singing from the NDP press release songbook. I think that will actually cost Lee votes in the long term. I don't think that's a net gain for him with the membership. I think, there's a free enterprise value around free speech. And that is a long-standing thing. And not bigoted speech, not racist speech, not discriminatory speech, but free speech in general. And there's a fear that, if you have an unpopular opinion or an opinion that, well, you've said many times, the federal libs are masters at decrying things for years, 10 a.m. saying we're now for it, and then by 2 p.m. saying, I can't believe those bigots are against this thing, that we were against yesterday. That is the fear, I think, among a lot of the Aaron Gunn conservatives, is that they could get hung up in that. So we'll see what happens. My advice to Aaron Gunn, not that he's called, but if he did, and my advice to him would be, look, you can't blow up don't blow up the only vehicle to defeat the NDP. Remember who the true enemy here is, which is the NDP and John Horgan and their, the kind of leftist values, more, large government, higher taxes, all those things that, are antithetical to common sense, as Gunn espouses. And, find a candidate to get behind, probably Ellis Ross, and go to work and, make change from within, because, your chance now is get a leader in there who understands, what your concerns are and can articulate them in a way, and then bring the party alongside. Don't go blowing up a coalition just for the sake of pique or personal vendetta. And for one thing, by doing that, you'll actually show those people who reject you that, this guy really is here for the long haul. He really does care about the values of the party going forward. Yeah. And he really is committed to defeating the NDP. And, Aaron Gunn's 31 years old. There could be a leadership race in 4 years. There could be one in 8 years. There could be one in 12 years. There are going to be other kicks at the can.
Yeah, I agree with every word of the advice you've just given, and you're right. He should not confirm people's worst fears right now. People who seek to destroy a party that a week ago they were trying to lead, history does not tend to look kindly on them. And you're right. And time should be on his side. I didn't know he was 31 years old. 31 is young. It's incredibly young, especially now. We have politicians running into their 70s. So, he's got more than all the years he's lived up till now to look forward to if he just keeps plugging away. And so, yes, that is good advice.
Yeah. Look,
speaking of
just before
good
we leave
advice,
just before we leave that,
yeah.
What we're saying is don't do the Mad Max model. Don't do the Max Bernier model.
Yes.
Where you go out and create your own party, and it really becomes like Mad Max will get, what did he get, 3% of the vote? Something like that? 5%? I don't know what it was. 0 seats. Mm-hmm. This thing is very much just a personality cult for him. And look, that's got to be gratifying, I'm sure, if you're Bernier and you know people everywhere, but it's not going to affect real change, and it's not going to affect long-term change. And when vaccine passports become irrelevant, which, God willing, they will someday, that relevance dissipates quickly. So, my advice to Aaron would be build for the long term. Max is built for the short term. He'll be irrelevant. Build for the long term, and the way to do that is to figure out, what is the one party that can defeat the NDP, and that's still the BC Liberals or whatever they'll be called.
Yeah, whatever its other virtues or faults, our system is built for large consensus-building coalition parties. Small single-issue or single-person parties, they don't last. They can't. It's not possible. It's not feasible. And you may consider that to be an argument for or against first past the post. Doesn't matter. It's the system we have. And so, moving forward, again, I can't disagree with any of your advice. Yeah. And I am going to once again try and use good advice as the bridge to the next segment, which is the NDP government is ignoring...
No, hold up. The one thing we didn't talk is the effect on the race here.
Yes, you're right. Sorry.
changes my theory.
My seg.
Yeah, this completely changes my theory of the BC Liberal race. So until he was thrown out, my theory of the race was Ellis Ross was going to be the next leader of the BC Liberal Party. Aaron Gunn would come into the race, bring in a few thousand members with him, depending on whatever. I'm mainly disappointed as a Democratic observer because I wanted to see if someone with a pure social media following could sign up members for a party. So I'm disappointed that we're not going to see that experiment.
And you were right about that. That was a fascinating experiment that could have happened.
Yeah. So I'm disappointed that's not going to happen. But my thought was Gunn would come in the race. Somehow Ellis would come to the top of the non-Falcon pile and then win on the final ballot over Falcon. I now believe Kevin Falcon will be the next leader of the BC Liberal Party. That's no knock on the other candidates, some of whom are performing way above expectation. And remind me to tell you Renee Merrifield's story about that. But I just don't see now where the votes are going to come from. Ellis is signing up members for sure, but so is Kevin. The Lee campaign, my sense up till now was that those 5 anti-Falcon candidates would probably coalesce somehow and pass Falcon. I now think that Lee is more likely to go to a guy like Falcon than to Ross, just based on some conversations I had with folks in Victoria who have observed the relationship between Lee and Ross. There doesn't seem to be much of one. By the way, if you're Ellis Ross or Michael Lee, you might want to build that relationship because, I don't know how you expect to ever become leader without the other one's second place votes. However, that's free advice. But like that, to me now, it's Falcon and maybe, Falcon 47, 48% on the first ballot and then winning on the second.
I mean, you've been accurate in a lot of things so far. So, I can't argue with that. And we'll see. I mean, I guess the question I would have is Aaron Gunn supporters, whoever they are and wherever they are in BC, are they necessarily not going to be involved at all? Are they going to do what it looks like Aaron Gunn has at least threatened to do in the last few days and, tear up their membership cards or not buy one and walk away? Or are some of them still going to be like, okay, well, if it can't be Aaron Gunn, maybe it should be Ellis Ross or whoever else?
Yeah, look, I think Ellis has the best chance of keeping as many of those folks as possible in the boat.
Yeah, I mean, he was the only one who said, yes, I think he should run. And so he does seem like the natural harbor, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're a Aaron Gunn supporter, I don't think now you're going to sign up for the BC Liberal membership to support Ellis Ross. But if you're already in the boat, you might be, I think you're at least willing to hear Ellis out based on that.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a Renee story?
Yes. Well, you know what? We may as well stay on the BC Liberal leadership race rather than go back and forth. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Your organization, IBCBA, has been talking to and hosting all the leadership candidates, and I think all but one so far. Is that correct?
Yes. So everyone but Michael Lee has met with our board and senior staff at some point. The reason why we meet with BC Liberal candidates is quite simple. The NDP government is opposed to things like secret ballot for union certification votes. They hand out sweetheart deals to 15% of the workforce organized by the building trades unions, actually, not allowing the workers of the 85% of companies in construction, like the ones we represent, from bidding on those projects, from receiving those projects. So, we're looking for political parties who support secret ballot, who will stop CBAs and other important fairness and transparency issues. So, we're looking at these BC Liberal leadership candidates. Kevin was very strong. He's a pro's pro when it comes to politics. Very, very smooth, understood the questions, certainly understands transportation infrastructure, construction, housing, those issues based on his background, both in and out of government. Very well done. Everyone else has kind of been, hit or miss as far as connection with the board. But I want to give a shout out to Renee Merrifield because she came into our board meeting in Victoria last week after breakfast, and she knocked it out of the park. She had a room full of 25 people, ranging from a suburban mom to crotchety construction company owner. To me, she had everyone's attention. She had great stories. She connected with the audience. There was no one tapping away on their laptop. There was no one playing with their phone. For 45 minutes, she commanded the room. And at one point, crotchety construction owner, he'll love that I call him that, by the way, throws up his hand and says, well, politicians always come in here and talk about all these things, but you say you're going to improve healthcare? Give me 3 ways you're going to improve healthcare, or 2 ways that you're going to improve healthcare. She's like, I'll give you 3. And she had 3 points, all of which made sense, were well articulated, and one of which she had actually already helped pioneer with Interior Health when she was a board member there. And he stopped, and he looked at her and he said, well, I got to give you credit. You actually had something concrete to my answer. I appreciate that. So, very strong performance by her. It's so early in her political career. I think she's someone who maybe in the next leadership race will be a significant force, maybe even a front runner. I think if she had, a Katie Merrifield or a Chris Gardner or a Mike McDonald, someone really working kind of the rough edges off and helping direct message and helping her, avoid the pitfalls of fighting with Bill Thielman on Twitter, that, a lot could happen for her. So she's we've talked about before, she's a candidate that has that feel of a next time candidate. But yeah, I was super impressed. I can tell you of all the folks who have come into the room, she commanded that room in a way that maybe only Kevin did. And it was a very, very interesting to watch.
Well, I can say that you are not the first person to tell me that she is much better and more impressive in person, which, if you think about it, we're still talking about a rookie MLA. It is not surprising that somebody who has been told for, I assume, years that you should run would be impressive in person, because those are the people that get encouraged to run. And that other things like, social media skills and media relations and being on camera, those things come with practice and time. Yeah. And so I think your points are well taken. And again, this is by no means the first time I have heard Renee Merrifield is actually quite impressive in person.
Yeah, she told a story about her first construction development project in Kelowna. And essentially, she's 23, she's pregnant, married, and they've put everything they have into this piece of land. And then she gets a fee of adjustments from adjustment fees from the lawyer, and she doesn't have the cash to pay for it. And she drives her little car to Money Mart and essentially gets a loan against her car. And every construction company owner in that room has had the experience where they were that close to losing everything. And most of them, very similar to her, that close to losing everything at the very, very beginning, when it was just them and their family's livelihood and future on the line. And it was a powerful way of introducing herself to them with a connection that they understood. And sometimes, I've heard, with Renee, sometimes her energy can seem frenetic, a little too much energy. Her energy was pitch perfect for this. She held their attention. It was an impressive showing. I walked her out, and I'm like, listen, I've been on enough political campaigns. At some point, your team's going to give you crap for something you have or haven't done. When they do, get them to call me, and I'll tell them how great you were today in this meeting. It's a freebie. It's a get out of jail free card for you. So
there you go.
I expect a call from Zubik anytime, I guess.
And it's when you get a call from Brad Zubik, instantly it's him, because there is no one who sounds like him.
Exactly.
It was a unique voice. Okay, I think we have talked enough about the BC Liberal leadership race this week. We can talk about the event of the legislature. I don't want to bridge to it without you saying it's all good.
It's all good.
I'm getting the 2 thumbs up. I want to talk about the FOI flap, which has been ongoing and I would argue snowballing for the NDP. Just as an incredibly brief wrap up, if you watch the show, chances are you're vaguely aware of this issue. But basically, the NDP have introduced an FOI bill which would greatly restrict access to freedom of information for journalists, the official opposition. They want to charge a fee, which they have been very coy and vague about, and have in fact, I guess, been fighting with Vaughn Palmer over his characterization of it as $25. It got worse this week. In fact, yesterday, when a opposition motion to pause the legislation until the committee specifically assigned to talk about this issue could meet for more than 2 minutes. The NDP put up no speakers, none, which is very rare in the legislature. Usually a government will at least send a couple backbench MLAs to stand up and say, this legislation is great for these reasons, and those guys are terrible for these reasons. In this case, nothing. Kind of what has been described as an embarrassed or ashamed silence. This story isn't going away. A lot of stories do with the passage of time, but this one directly affects journalists. So these are the stories that don't go away. And in fact, I will argue will get worse, because the first time, Joe reporter with the local paper has to file one, and it costs them $25, that is going to get screenshotted and posted, and it's going to make the rounds on Facebook and Twitter, and the story is only going to get worse from there.
Yeah, and every time they get back documents that are redacted, there'll be a picture of the $25, and I paid $25 for this.
Yep.
ICBA has joined the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association, who are not flamethrowers at all. Like, these are good, solid people who have worked for many years to try to get more information out of government. Not from a partisan strand or anything like that, just because it's the right thing to do. And they are not crazies. They are not activists in any sense of the word. They're just people who want better FOI legislation. And we've joined their coalition to push back against this. They've started letter writing campaigns and things like that. My question is, the NDP didn't put up any speakers. Is that because the backbench refused to speak, or is that just a strategic decision, or a little of both, where it was like, no one really wants to talk about this, so let's just not put anyone up?
Yeah, it's probably both. I have to imagine that there are people in the NDP caucus room who are saying, you guys, this is insane, and I'm going to have trouble speaking about this. This kind of thing happens from time to time when governments introduce legislation. Usually someone will go to the House leader and be like, listen, I will do what I'm told, but I would really prefer not to talk to this bill because it's just not where I'm at. That is not particularly unusual. The problem the NDP have with this bill is they have a lot of people who either made extensive use of FOI in opposition, and very well on many occasions, that's meant as praise, and people who have been very vocal in their opposition to charging a fee on FOI, notably Murray Rankin, who's now a minister in the NDP cabinet. He was vociferous in his opposition. That's right, vociferous, when he was an MP in Ottawa, when the federal government tried to introduce a $5 charge, which you will notice is considerably less than $25. Yeah. So yes, anyone they brought up would have been instantly leveled with accusations of hypocrisy. But again, they could have just put up someone and chose not to. It becomes sort of a show of arrogance. Like, well, we don't have to. This is all a charade. We're going to pass it anyway. We're a majority. It doesn't look good on a government. They should at least defend their bill. And these things are crucial because House debates are often used in legal decisions after the fact, where judges can sort of discern what the government was trying to do. In this case, it's just going to be silence.
Yeah, my favorite moment was Mike DeYoung eviscerating them for this, not just the bill, but the nonsense going along with it. And Bob Deeth from Maple Ridge, very forgettable MLA from Maple Ridge, starts heckling Mike. And MDJ just turns on him and goes, finally, someone from that side is going to speak to this bill. Stand up and speak. Essentially, I'll yield my time to you if you're actually going to speak to this bill. And Deeth, of course, clammed up pretty quick. It is embarrassing. Not to pick on Rob Shaw, but he's, he tweets out, the great lament about how every government eventually becomes so arrogant in their power that they do things like this. My point to Rob was not usually in the first year of their majority mandate. Usually this is like a year, 7, 5, 6, 7, 15 kind of thing, not year 1. We're really fast forwarding here. It's embarrassing. Lisa Bear is the minister. She's offered half-hearted defense, I believe, to the media. The media is not buying it. Vaughn Palmer is just like vintage Palmer, carving these people up. Just like sharpening the knife and then plunge. Unbelievable what he's writing. Les Lane, same thing. This is a bad look for this government.
Yeah.
They need to find, the way out of it was frankly to send it to the committee that by law is supposed to look at it, but they're circumventing that law. It's just mind-boggling.
It feels like it's done in haste. Like they could have let the committee sit and then still done whatever the hell they wanted, and at least they'd have the fig leaf of saying, "Well, we disagree with the findings of the committee." This is just crazy, and there's probably, Rob and others have made the point that does Joe Public care about FOI? Probably not. But there's probably never been a worse time to run afoul of people advocating for more transparency when FOI has dug up so many interesting and revealing, and I would argue important facts about, pandemic response, hospitalizations, deaths. Just yesterday, that the head of Ecom has been raising the flag about, paramedic shortages. months before the heat dome.
Yeah.
These are important things to know, and it will help government deliver better services. And, strangling that right now just looks like, well, the word is arrogant.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And what it does is, maybe it's not about FOI in particular, but the media will reshape their narrative around the NDP and John Horgan as secretive, elusive, untruthful, like not willing to stand up and face the press. Like there will be another shift in kind of the public's view of that.
Yeah.
And they, 4 years, 3 years from now, whenever the election is, the public may not be able to define the letters FOI, but they'll know, they hide secrets from us. They don't want us to really know what's going on. That's important. And then, look, there are lots of groups out there who I'm sure have campaigns planned on this. This is not going away. The media is one aspect of it. You can bet FIPA is not going away. I can tell you, being an old Canadian Taxpayers Federation person, I'm sure they're going to get involved in this. ICDA, we're kicking around, I'm kicking around budgeting $5,000 for next year and essentially offering it to any, reporter or advocacy group that, wants to apply for a $25 rebate of their fee. I'll call it the FEEDM of information, John Horgan's FEEDM of Information Fund. And we'll publicize it every single time we, reimburse someone. I don't even care what you're FOIing. Just, this is so egregious and counter to democracy that folks who do believe in, that the government doesn't own this information that taxpayers do, we got to stand up and be counted on this.
Yeah, and I mean, the frustrating thing is that I don't buy the government's given rationale for this, but just taking it on face value for argument's sake, which is that there are two, and I mean exactly two, and I'm going to use the air quotes here if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, bad actors who have been, again, air quotes, abusing the system by filing too many requests. Okay, I reject that premise, but even if you accept it, okay then, introduce a cap.
Yep.
We can argue what the cap is. That's fine, but why not do that? Why are you punishing the student reporter at UVic? Why are you punishing the local community paper? Why are you punishing Global News or CTV when Penny Daflos is digging up great stuff with FOI? What is the rationale for that? There's no justification for that. That is the part that I find so frustrating, is it's just so insulting to the intelligence. But even if you accept the premise of why they're doing this, which I do not, what they're doing makes no sense. Yeah. And it's frustrating.
It's also lying. John Horgan stands up with his phone and, we get all these requests and dad apps and apps I have no idea what they do. By the way, no vaccine card app on there, so that's a little bit weird. But whatever. No. And, this is what they're going for. So John Woodward, God bless him, goes back and looks. Because every BC government freedom of information request eventually ends up online. And that's how you prevent having multiple requests for the same information. He goes back and looks. One time, someone asked for a screenshot of a phone, and I believe it was Michelle Mungal's phone for some reason, and it was actually related to it was like a random thing. One time, years ago. So, it is disingenuous at best and lying at worst to claim that it's about, look at my phone. Come on, that is so unbecoming of a premier who, for all my criticism of him on various policy issues, and I have many, I generally thought was a pretty decent guy who wanted to do the right thing. Closing off government information is never the right thing. That just doesn't make any sense, and I think this is where the brand gets diminished further.
Yeah,
so there
I feel like this is a knee-jerk reaction to something that is genuinely aggrieving them, but done in the most clumsy and reactionary way possible, and it doesn't look good on them, and I think they are going to have to climb down eventually.
Yeah. Well, you say that, but they don't seem to give
you're right. I mean, there's some wishful thinking mixed in there, but I also think that eventually it'll be the path of least resistance. I don't know this. I am guessing there are people in that room who are saying, we're going to have to take some short-term pain and at least prefer this to committee, like they did with the mental health and the detaining youth against their will, where it's okay. It's the public has a high tolerance for, we tried, we didn't get this exactly right. We'll come back with a better plan. There's a high tolerance for that. Well, and yes, you have a day of looking embarrassed, but it's much better than ramming this through and wearing this.
Yeah, paging Murray Rankin, paging former BC Civil Liberties President David Eby. this is the time. Stand up and do the right thing. Don't just go along with it unless this is what you truly believe, in which case stand up in the House and be held accountable for your beliefs, because that's the way it should be. This hiding behind secrecy, like hiding behind silence in order to bring in a secrecy law, it's just, I can't, like civil liberties, David Eby would just be setting his hair on fire on such a thing. It's embarrassing. So would Sierra Club executive director George Heyman. Obviously, Murray Rankin did it in the House of Commons. Nathan Collin didn't support this when it was in the federally. So let's see you guys stand up and actually do the right thing here for once and get this thing pulled, because it is ridiculous and it's only going to cause you trouble down the road.
You mentioned those three. Rick Glumick is the chair of the committee that was supposed to look at this. They met for it. Everyone agrees. 2 minutes. He's still going to collect whatever the stipend is. I want to say $17,000 in change for chairing that committee. That's embarrassing. Yeah. I'm not suggesting he give the money back, because that's a precedent that no one's going to set. But
I'll suggest it.
He should give the money back. But
look, in Alberta, remember the no-meat committees? This was a big deal like 4 or 5 years ago. And all of those, was that in Redford? I think it was under Redford. They all had to pay back because they would get committee stipends for committees that didn't meet for years. 2 minutes isn't enough. Sorry. You shouldn't get $1,700, let alone $17,000 or whatever the actual amount is if your committee isn't meeting. So he should give that money back for sure. If they're not going to refer anything to it and their committee's not actually going to do any work, why should he get a stipend from the provincial government? And I tell you what, take that $17,000 and apply it to the first however many 100 FOI requests, $25 fees in order to make that work.
He'd be a hero to many. Probably short-circuit any cabinet aspirations, but I mean, that's probably
Rick Glumack's not going into cabinet anytime soon anyways. I hate to break it to Rick Glumack.
That's probably true. I think he knows that too. We ended up talking quite a bit about this and the BC Liberal leadership race. That's 45 minutes almost. There's a lot we could have talked about, and maybe we will next week. But Jordan, unless you have any final thoughts.
Where else are you going to get 30 minutes on the BC Liberal leadership race? I would argue our 30 minutes of the BC Liberal leadership race, you learn more and we talked more about it than the mainstream media does in a whole week put together. So sometimes...
probably true. I don't know if that'll be true forever. I think there will be more coverage coming, but yeah, I mean, you're right. You're not wrong. Hey, we have fans. I get told this all the time. This is a good thing.
I just want to get out of this before Maclean points out that the Stampeders are now a win ahead of the Lions in the CFL West standings. So.
And have not lost 5 in a row like the Lions have, and they've scored 3 points total in the last 2 games. It's not great.
We're just lulling the CFL into a false sense of security.
They do have the appearance of a team. Sorry, Jillian. Yes, you're done. We miss you in the UK. They do have the appearance of a team that is kind of falling apart at the seams due to the Lions, which is a shame. I actually really like their lineup. I think they have a lot of talent.
What are you going to do? They can't get bleached like that to the Blue Bombers. I mean, it was a complete no-show. So.
Oof, yeah.
This week they got to dig deep, find a way to win. Or
who are they playing this week? I can't remember.
It's an Eastern team, I think. Montreal, maybe?
Yeah, possibly. I think so.
Yeah.
My boys are playing Ottawa, and we also need that win. So we'll see.
I picked. So I'm in a CFL prediction pool. It's a free thing, and I picked all 4 road teams this week.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is mathematically is stupid, but I just couldn't decide which home team could actually pull it out.
Huh.
So
my sense is, and I don't have the data to back this up, that home field advantage means less in the CFL than it does elsewhere, but I don't know that. Yeah. But that seems to be the trend this year at least.
All right. Well, there you go. Again, that's more CFL talk than you hear on local sports radio.
We're filling all kinds of niches left and right. Jordan's probably not filling the left niche.
No, never left. Always right wing.
You're welcome. No context, BC Gov. Until next week, he's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. Happy politics.